Okay, welcome to everyone again on Instagram. Welcome to everyone on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you so much for being here with me. Sorry for the delay of the technical difficulties, but I'm so excited to have you here for another episode of Break into Law School. So, just some housekeeping. I will be taking your questions, but we're doing something a little bit different this week. We'll be taking your questions at the end. So, I don't want you to think that I'm not answering your questions or I'm ignoring you. We are definitely going to take your questions and we're just going to take them at the end. But yeah, I just wanted to welcome you, like I said, to another episode of Break into Law School. Today, we are talking about following up with law schools. How do you follow up with law schools that you haven't heard back from yet? How do you follow up with law schools that you've been waitlisted at? And how does follow up look like even after a seat deposit deadline? For those of you who are new, my name is Sydney Montgomery, and I'm a law school admissions consultant specializing in working with first generation and minority applicants. So I'm really excited to have you here today. So, the thing that we're talking about is how to follow up and what are the things that you need to do when you are trying to make contact with a school and you're not exactly sure the best way to go about it. The first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you understand that throughout law school, the whole application process, this is a relational process. So what does that mean? That means that you want to be relationship building your entire time, whether that's you're at the very beginning of the process, you're just looking into law school, you're at the middle of the process, you've already applied, or especially at the end. Of course, when you start that relationship building process at the beginning, it can be a little bit easier than if you do you get to the very end of the process and then you're just now starting the relationship building. The reason you want to continue to have it be a relationship building process and not just a transactional process is for multiple reasons. The first thing is that the legal community is actually incredibly small, and people don't realize that even within admissions professionals, many of whom have a JD or went to law school, the legal community is just very tight knit and very insular. And you'll see as you go through your career as an attorney how your circles continually overlap with someone else's circles, or even how that admission dean or that admission director might end up being someone that can actually help you in your career outside of school, even if it's not a school that you went to. I know I always tell the story that for me, I was really intentional about getting to know the admission deans and directors of the schools that I applied to and seeing them as people. I met a lot of them when they came on campus at Princeton when I was a senior. They did a lot of on-campus presentation. I always made sure to go to those presentations, to show my face, to make sure that I'm asking a question, and then to follow up with them and continue that door. Now, I can say that some of those people are still mentors to me in my space where I currently stand. And of course, I didn't know when I was a senior in college that I would be here as a law school admissions consultant. But that kind of goes to the power of never really knowing where life is going to take you and who can be beneficial to you in your path, and then who you can benefit in the path as well, because you might actually be someone that will impact positively that admission dean or director. And so when you're thinking though about how to do the follow up, I always like to say if you have a solid relationship built, then that just becomes so much easier. Sometimes students will say, well, I applied in October and it's April and I still haven't heard anything from the school. I'm not sure. And that's where that relationship part comes in, because when you have a relationship with an admissions officer, it just makes sense. It's the most natural thing for you to do, to say, hey, I just wanted to make sure that everything, was good. I know deposit deadlines are coming up. I haven't heard from your school, and I just wanted to make sure that you have everything that you need from me. You'll be surprised how many times it's an email that got stuck in spam or something that got stuck on their end and wasn't completely processed. Which brings me, of course, to my second point. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call somebody. I know with COVID, that's definitely more tricky, and some schools do have a preference for sending emails in this time. And so, absolutely, you want to be following what the school's saying. You want to be respectful of the processes that they have. You want to be respectful of the time. But I have found that email can sometimes fall flat, especially if it's, hey, it's April and I haven't heard from your school yet. Sending an email may or may not get the job done. You might not be able to convey the tone that you're looking for. Perhaps it gets lost in the shuffle because they're getting a lot of emails. But if you're able to get someone on the phone and just have a conversation about what your concerns are, and this is especially true if you're talking about negotiating scholarship money or anything really, if there are concerns that you have about affordability or whether it's a school that's going to be inclusive of your diverse identity, sometimes if they have the opportunity to call, that can be much more effective. You can really get to know the person on the other end of the phone call. They can really get to know you. There's a lot of follow-up questions that can be had. Shout out actually to New York Law School because they have a form where they invite you to schedule a phone call with admissions, whether you're waitlisted or a prospective student. And I think that makes the process so much more transparent. It humanizes the process, it humanizes you, and it humanizes the other side, so you're not feeling, even if it's a school that you ultimately don't get accepted to, you don't feel like they didn't even consider you, they didn't even care about you as a student and an applicant, and I know sometimes it's easy to feel that way as well, but when you're able to kind of pick up that phone, get someone on the other end, then you also sometimes gain an advocate in the process. You have someone who has spent time with you, like you as a person. They've read your file, and maybe when it comes down to waitlist season, they might be advocating on your behalf, saying, yeah, but this student I know would be a great fit to our community because have I, read his essays and I've seen his resume, but I've interacted with him and he has the qualities that I know we're looking for in our student body. He is what we're trying to shape our class to be. So I also like to say that if it's a time sensitive issue, for example, if you haven't heard back from a school, but your deposit deadline is in a week, you want to pick up the phone and call them because you might send an email, they might get back to you in 3 days or more, and by then you may have had to make a different decision. So, I think sometimes we forget that we have that agency and we have perhaps even a quicker way of getting in contact. Because if you're able to get someone on the phone, you might have your answer in the same day or even the next day versus getting kind of lost in the email shuffle. So there are a number of schools that also have opportunities for waitlist candidates, especially to interview or, like I said, to contact admissions. You want to be taking advantage of all of the ways that you can really get to know someone on the other side of the desk. The third main point about follow-up is that it's not a one and done deal. So you followed up one time. Unless the school has said, and there are several schools that don't want to be continually contacted, I don't think that's sufficient. And I don't think that's sufficient for a number of reasons. The answer that if they don't have an answer, right? If you ask them in February, hey, I applied in October, I haven't heard back anything, and they say, okay, just sit tight, they might actually legitimately have a different answer in April. And then I think, and I feel this a lot from my students right now, I think people are looking at deposit deadlines as the end. Like, if you don't get an answer back from a school by the deposit deadline, if you don't get yourself off the wait list by the deposit deadline, then you're done. And I really want to encourage you to look at deposits the beginning, right? You don't understand, I guess, or it's important to understand what schools are dealing with and their amount of information. So in February, they honestly might not have an answer to your question. In April, they might have a little bit more information. But after deposit deadlines is when the schools actually have the most information about what they're going to be able to do with wait lists, about what they're going to be able to do with scholarships, about what they're going to be able to offer you because they will have a better understanding of what their class looks like. And that's really important if you're trying to get off of a wait list, right? And I know I always use this analogy analogy, if they've got 500 and they've said yes to 1,000 people, they literally don't know how many extra spots they will have until they hear back of those 1,000 people or after the deposit deadline. Doesn't matter. And then they will know, okay, I have 200 spots left over. I have 3 spots left over. They'll be able to say, okay, these number of people accepted our scholarships, and or, we've given out way too much scholarship money, we don't have anything left. Or actually half of the people that we gave scholarship money to ended up turning us down. So we now have a little bit more scholarship money. And this goes even if you're already admitted. I know oftentimes students are trying to make law school as affordable as possible. And before deposit deadlines, I know you're trying to get as much money as you can. However, I encourage you that if affordability really is a concern, in May or in June, do another school and say, I'm so excited to start in the fall. I appreciate how generous and accommodating and flexible you've been in this process. Thank you so much for answering all of my questions. I just wanted to reach out and check to see if there were any additional funds for incoming students. Because you never know, there might be additional funds. They certainly don't know that answer in April and May when they're trying to figure out who even is in their class and what money they're giving out. But if you wait and continue the conversation in May or June, then they may have a different answer for you. Now, going back to my first point about this being about relationship building, the phrase that I just said is continue the conversation. It is significantly easier for them to want to help you in May or June if you have a relationship with them already, not just showing up out of the woodwork, because they're going to be like, well, where were you this whole time? I heard of you. I mean, obviously, maybe we admitted you if you're an admitted student. If you're on the wait list and they've never heard from you, they have no idea what your level of interest is in the school. It's a much difficult conversation. And then, of course, not even just talking about not knowing you. Sometimes, unfortunately, students can be quite rude in this process because you're looking at it as, what can you do for me? Okay, law school, what can you do for me? Why do you want me to come to your school? What are you going to do that's going to make me say yes? And if you go into that with that kind of bullish attitude, it can be really a turnoff. And so even in the application process, I see this, students are asking questions to admissions during the application process that is kind of rude, or condescending or short or just not a nicely worded email. Or they may have opinions about the school that they say in a kind of combative way. Those sort of things, they remember it. I mean, they're people, right? They remember the emails that you sent. I think there's this misconception that maybe even the receptionist or admissions staff don't really matter because they're not really reading your essays and they're not really making decisions, but kind of everyone matters. Everyone that you interact with, consider them part of your file. Because I know if I were working, if I were, CEO of a company, and I had a staff member and someone said, oh, this prospective client was super rude to the admin. Well, I don't want to work with that person, right? So it's the same way with schools. They are a community, they are colleagues, they work together. You want to be respectful of them, um, in all of your conversations. And then especially when we're talking about negotiations and navigating wait lists, and this is the time when people really have the most interactions with admissions, you want to make sure that you're laying the groundwork for a positive relationship. So if you do end up going to that school in May or in June, you can have a conversation with them about if there anything more that they can do in order to help this become an affordable reality. Now, there may not be anything else that they can do, but the point is that you show that you are dedicated, that you are respectful, that you care about the process, and that you care about them as a person, and then they in turn will do the same thing. So I think those are really important points to remember, that there's a lot of work that can be done with schools after deposit deadlines. I know some schools have already had their deposit deadline. Some schools, the first of April was the first deposit deadline, or the 15th, and I know we're coming up on a really large one with May 1st. And so I really want to encourage you not to look at the deposit deadline as, well, if it doesn't happen by then, it's not happening, not going to that school, not getting any more scholarship money. Should just, pack it up. But that there is so much wait lists in this application season are not even going to really start to move for especially a lot of the top schools until after May, right? And so these wait lists are going to move all the way through August. So it's like the long game that you're playing. And so the chances of getting off a wait list before a deposit deadline are not very high because they don't have any more information than they did when they waitlisted you. So you really need to be looking at, okay, how am I setting myself up so that when deposit deadlines pass and when the school has more information and when the school knows what their class is going to look like, how many seats they have left, what their money looks like, how am I setting myself conversation with them and continue following up with them in a way that best positions myself to either get off a wait list or to get some more money. There's this misconception that waitlisted students don't get any scholarship money, and that's not true. Now, it's not, I would say that in terms of large merit scholarships, maybe that's a little bit more difficult, but also not impossible because when you think about it, a school could have given out a ton of scholarship money, a ton of full ride offers that were never accepted. So now when they're looking at their waitlist candidates, it really depends on how many seats the school has to fill, right? If the school is really looking to pull strong candidates off the waitlist to fill seats because they want all the seats full, if that's what their goal is in pulling students off the wait list, they absolutely will offer merit aid because at the end of the day, they need to fill their seats. And there's no guarantee that you will come to the school or not. And you may be weighing other options. So I don't want you thinking that it's automatic that if you get off a wait list, you're getting no scholarship money. That's a wrong way of thinking about it as well. Things are not as black and white or hard, fast rules. There are a lot of gray area opportunities when it comes to wait lists and scholarship navigation. And so I really want to make that clear to you that you should continue to be just in as much earnest as you were before the deposit deadlines and trying to see what you can do to advocate yourself to get off the wait list, see what you can do to advocate for yourself for scholarships. Um, and continue that conversation and not just do it one time, right? I love it when students ask the schools how often they'd like the schools to hear from them, how they would like to interact with their waitlist candidates. I think it's really important to follow the rules and procedures of every school because every school is different. But some schools definitely recommend more than one letter of continued interest. Some schools say, please update us with any changes in your resume. Please update us with any opportunities. This is really important. You might have gotten waitlisted in February, and maybe the waitlist is going to really move in July. Well, what can you do between February and July to either increase your Lsat score or increase your resume, get some work experience that maybe they didn't see, or maybe you got a promotion, or maybe you're doing some volunteer activities. So they will sometimes say, yes, please update us with any changes. Please update us with any just more information that we can try to use to get you into a school. And I think that's really important as well. So I'm going to pause there because I just talked for 25 minutes straight, and I want to see if there are questions that you guys have on the concept of how often you should you follow up with schools, on the concept of what that follow-up looks like, the importance of not just like restricting yourself to email, but also YouTube, but also Zoom and also phone. And of course, there's some schools where they are doing in-person meetings, although not most. But so I want to hear from you guys. What questions do you have about that? Um, if not, I will just make sure that we have covered all the bases. And then, of course, like always, I will I will end us with a prayer, but I just wanna make sure that I have answered all the questions that you guys have on how you can best follow up, and I wanna know, like, have you employed these techniques? Have you tried calling? Have you tried, emailing? What has your response been? Because I know for the students that I work with pretty closely, um, they have had great success when they are a little bit more proactive in the process, and they have had really good, connections, and maybe they're connections for, "Okay, hey, look, you're a really great candidate, we really love you, why don't you reapply in the fall?" And honestly, that's not even the worst thing that could happen because you can continue to build that relationship all summer. You can make sure that you submit your application in September, and then you can follow up with that person and say, "Hey, you should follow up in the summer, of course. But then, hey, I just submitted my application in September, like we talked about last May. I know that you said I needed to do these things. I'm so happy that I was able to. Please let me know, what else." And that makes their job a lot easier because you're really showing dedication at that point to the process. Okay, so a couple of questions that are coming in. Once we apply, should we still consider testing for the LSAT again? This is a tricky question. It depends on your list, right? So if you and it also depends on timing. So there are a lot of schools that if they see that you have another LSAT on file, they will hold your application, right? They won't review your application because they see that you have a pending LSAT score. So in the best case scenario, and this kind of goes to someone else's questions, what would you recommend as the best strategy for prospective students? The best scenario is to give yourself plenty of time to prepare beforehand so you don't have to do those things. So you want to give yourself 3 to 6 months to study for the LSAT. You want to give yourself 3 to 6 months to write all your essays. You want to figure out, am I going to use a test prep plan? Am I going to get a tutor? Am I going to get a course? Am I going to work with someone like myself on your essays? You want to figure out what your attack is gonna be, and then you ultimately want to finish testing the summer before applications open. And you wanna get the score that you're aiming for so that you feel confident when you are submitting your applications that, "Yes, my scores are at the medians or above for the schools that I really wanna go to that I would be very happy at." Maybe I'm not gonna get into every single school. We should all have a balanced list that includes some reach schools because you don't wanna say no to yourself, before someone else does, as long as it's within reason. Some kind of target schools and some more fallback options, although honestly, with law school admissions, safety is kind of a hard and not so accurate term, but you do want to have a balanced list so that if you are waitlisted, you know that it's not really because of your LSAT score. However, if you do find yourself, if a school, let's say it's February and you've heard back from all of your schools, you've gotten some acceptances, and you've gotten some wait lists, at that point, I would say it's not a bad idea, depending on how the LSAT went for you, to consider retesting. So I really say you have to know yourself. Understandably, for a lot of students, the LSAT is incredibly demoralizing and it's kind of an unhealthy relationship. Like a hate-hate relationship. If you feel like you truly gave it everything and you studied hard and you gave yourself at least 3 to 6 months, maybe 9 months, and you used a tutor or a test prep, you did what you were supposed to do, and you scored at or better tests, then I don't know it would really be likely that you could uh, significantly raise your score. You know that you kind of rushed the LSAT process, or you didn't have a good test, and you know in you, you could probably score a few points higher. Or even, there are some people that really enjoy the LSAT. Shout out to all the LSAT tutors out there, right? And it's not really a negative experience, and it's something that was kind of fun for you. I know some of you are listening and you're gonna be like, "Who thinks the LSAT is fun?" There are people that think the LSAT is fun. So if that's you and it's not gonna completely derail your life to go back into study mode, and it's not going to be something that is draining on your mental health, then I think considering to retake an April or a June Lsat to help you with some waitlists is generally a good strategy because, you could go up those points. So it really depends on your situation. It's not like a blanket like I told you, there's really no black and whites in law school admissions. So it's not like a blanket, "Oh, yes, absolutely, you should retest." Because for some people, you got that score and you were like, "I don't know how I got this score," and we're just done because I can't do that again. Probably not gonna get a lot of benefit from trying to study and retesting for. Okay, we have another question. How would you rank law school? Does it matter where you go? It does absolutely matter where you go to law school, depending on what your career goals are. And so that's a question that I think maybe, I can talk about next week. But depending on what your career goals are, there are certain schools that you want to be targeting because it can be much more difficult to get into certain career paths from certain schools. And also, it matters in terms of geography, where you want to practice. Okay, is there a particular time frame we should wait before reaching out to a school that we haven't heard from? I'm waiting on one last school, and they said they would try to give a decision within 4 weeks. It's been just over 4 weeks, and I want to be mindful that this has been a very busy admission season, but I also have seat deposits coming up at other schools. I think that I think that you can frame it respectfully, right? "Dear so and so admissions, I understand that this has been an incredibly busy application season. Um, and well, let me back up. First, I would say I would give it at least 5 weeks, right? If they said just under 4 weeks, don't like hit, reply right at the 4 week mark. I would probably give them 5 weeks if you can with your deposit deadlines. But if you really do have deposits that are coming up, it's very reasonable for you to say, I understand this has been an incredibly busy application season. Thank you so much for the time and attention that you've been spending on my applications as well as others. Um, I don't mean to, to rush the process or however you wanna word it. I just wanna let you know I have a seat deposit coming up on this date. You wanna be specific at that point, right? Like, I need to make a decision on another school by X date. I just wanted to continue to follow up to see if it might be possible to hear more information about my decision before that date. Thank you so much. Um I think it's just really important to be transparent at that point. I think saying upcoming seat deposits, like, when? 2 weeks, 1 week, tomorrow? If it's tomorrow, you probably aren't gonna really hear back soon enough, but I think that, again, we're building relationships, right? And so that is part of the relationship building process, being open and honest about what you need and what you have to do, and them being able to say, "Yeah, we can do that," or, "No, I'm sorry, we're not gonna be able to give you information by that point." At that point, you have to decide if you feel comfortable depositing at the other school, and depending on what that deposit information or the deposit policies are, um, that would that would dictate how you do. Like, so some schools you can deposit and then you can still wait to hear from that school. Some schools, if you deposit, you have to withdraw from all offers, but you can stay on wait lists. Some schools, yeah, if you deposit, you withdraw from all offers and you withdraw from all wait lists. So you have to be really clear about what you're signing when you deposit. But let's say that you financially were able to do that. Um, I would say that it is totally fine for you to deposit at school A that has the deposit deadline as long as it's non-binding and you're financially able to do that, and then continue to wait for school B. Um, Now if you truly, truly believe that, if you hear back from school B, you're gonna go, that can be something that you weigh as well in terms of where you deposit, but it's not really fair to ask school A to wait, and extend their deposit deadline when they've given you all the information, but it's also very reasonable to ask school B, um, to to help you make that decision so that you can be judicious with your financial resources when it comes to depositing. In general, I would say, like, I would probably follow up every 1 to 2 months if it's a school that, as we get into kind of this waitlist season, right? Not like if they waitlisted you in November, I wouldn't follow up they're not gonna have any more information. But after, the deadlines and that sort of thing, I think that a month, 4 to 6 weeks station is pretty reasonable because a lot can change in that time frame and they have more information to give you. Are there other questions? Going once? Okay, well, just to let know, I'm really excited because I know you've been telling me that, "Oh, I don't necessarily have social media clients for the law school application process." We are in the process of turning a kind of break into law school episodes into to have them on Spotify, on iTunes, on Google, Podcasts, wherever you kind of listen, to you get the information without feeling like you have to log into social media if that's something that you want. You can always submit questions ahead of time to bit.ly/break into law school. I love hearing from you guys. I love hearing from your questions, and your question might be something that we're to spotlight and highlight. I also want to let you guys know that I am in the process of creating a masterclass for you specifically on waitlists because there have been so many questions, and this year is especially crazy with waitlists. So that masterclass will launch the first week of May, right after deposit deadline, so we can really get into the nitty-gritty of it. It's a live masterclass. It will be recorded. There will be a replay. We are gonna go through everything from templates on how you communicate with admissions, on how you write your letters of continued interest, to different strategies. We're gonna walk through some case studies of students that I've successfully helped get off wait lists. We're gonna talk about timing. We're gonna talk about what to do when you get the offer. We're gonna go into all of it. So that masterclass will launch the first week of May. If you are not subscribe to my email list, you definitely want to do that because that is how you will get the most up-to-date information about that masterclass. And you can subscribe to my email list on my website, www.smontgomeryconsulting.com. Great. I'm going to pray us out, and then this replay will be available on YouTube and in the Facebook group, and it will also be on IGTV. Dear Heavenly Father, we just come to you and we say thank you. Thank you for getting us through the middle of April. This has been and will continue to be, I know, a stressful month for many applicants who are waiting on schools, trying to make decisions, trying to figure out financial aid, trying to navigate merit scholarships, trying to navigate whether they should be retesting for the Lsat. There's a lot of questions. And so I ask that you would bring clarity in this situation, that you would also give them a spirit of compassion, both themselves and for those on the other side of the desk. We know that this has been unprecedented admission season. And so I just want to ask a special blessing over all of those admissions deans and directors and committee members who have been staying up incredibly late, reading essays, sacrificing time with their family, working from home with kids, dealing with COVID and all that comes with it, and also an unexpected tripling, quadrupling of their normal workload. So I just thank you for them, and I thank you for their dedication to being part of the process. I ask that you would give them compassion for applicants who have been trying to navigate the admission process and trying to find clarity in a very confusing time, that everyone would have grace for each other and the circumstances that they are dealing with. I ask a blessing over all those who are waiting to hear back from schools, who are waiting to see if they get off the wait list, who are waiting to figure out what the fall is going to look like. I ask that you would calm any anxiety that they have and that you would give them wisdom for how to reach out, wisdom for when to follow up and how to follow up. I ask that you would give them courage to pick up the phone and go outside of their comfort zone in order to facilitate some of these relationships, that you would give them courage to advocate for themselves in a respectful manner, that you would give them wisdom to discern the best way to go about that, and also that you would give them the confidence that you are with them in this process and that they are not alone and that you have not brought them this far to fail and that they will be attorneys and they will be able to make the impact that they want on their communities, in the business sector, or internationally, and the community that you are calling them to join in the fall. I thank you for this space. I thank you for allowing me to be able to answer their questions. I thank you for everyone who has stumbled upon this today, that they would continue to be nourished and be fed by the community, and that they would continue to feel supported and that they are not alone in this process. I ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. So thank you guys for joining me for, like I said, another episode of Break into Law School. I have so enjoyed getting to answer your questions today, and I really look forward to next week. And I will let you know what we'll talk about. If you have questions, definitely submit them to bit.ly/breakintolawschool, and I will see you guys soon. Bye, guys.